Hey there, Drowsy Historian here. Tonight you're not in first class. You're not rich or lucky or even remotely prepared. You're just another nameless passenger tucked into the underbelly of the world's most famous floating tomb, RMS Titanic. You don't have a suite or a silk dinner jacket. You have a stiff bunk, a chamber pot, and a one-way ticket to the bottom of the Atlantic. You don't know it yet, but you're already a ghost in someone else's tragedy. And no one's coming to save you. So before the deck tilts, the lights dim, and the water creeps up past your ankles, leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from and what time it is. I always love to know who's still awake, while we quietly sink through another beautifully avoidable moment in history. If you'd like early access to more long, cold disasters like this one, and other perks like ad-free audio, the episodes, you'll find a link to the Patreon in the description. Now lie back, breathe slowly, and brace yourself. The iceberg is waiting. You board the Titanic with the sort of cautious optimism that only poverty can forge. Not hope exactly. Hope implies options. This is more like a numb sort of endurance wrapped in a thin wool coat. You've said goodbye to the crumbling tenement that raised you, kissed your mother's cheek, while avoiding the parts with the scab, and traded your last coin for passage to a country you've never seen and can't quite picture. America. Land of opportunity, allegedly. Or at least land of factory work and slightly less mould. And to get there, you're putting your fate in a brand new 4-funnel floating palace designed by people who believed humility was for the poor and lifeboats were for cowards. You don't come aboard in style. There's no brass band, no champagne, no one saying your name with a soft, reverent hush. Instead, you're herded like livestock down a gangplank, with 100 others who smell vaguely like coal dust and overboiled potatoes. Your boots squelch on the dock. Your fingers are numb. The salt air stings your face and the ship looms above, like a steel cathedral, towering silent and already certain of your place in it. Somewhere deep inside, where the light doesn't reach and the wallpaper isn't even pretending to be decorative. Third class is located several levels below anything described in the brochures. The corridors are narrow and smell like someone once tried to scrub them and then gave up halfway through. You're shown to your cabin, or rather your steel closet, by a steward who says very little and seems to be paid by the minute. Inside, the air is stale and slightly damp, as though the walls themselves are sweating. There are 4 bunks, stacked 2 by 2, and no indication of who's sleeping where. Your assigned mattress is a rectangle of lumpy stuffing wrapped in something that might once have been cotton. It crunches slightly when you sit on it. There is no private sink, no private anything really. You share the lavatory with a hallway full of strangers who have no concept of boundaries and limited access to soap. You brought 1 nice shirt for Sunday and a crust of bread wrapped in cloth. The bread goes stale within hours. The shirt won't survive the week. Your roommate snores like a dying accordion and claims to be very used to close quarters, which doesn't explain why he smells like warm cheese. Still, you try to be impressed. The Titanic is enormous, after all. You walk the third-class promenade deck, a strip of cold steel, and railings bolted to the side of the hull like an afterthought. If you squint upward, past 3 more levels of deck space you're not allowed to enter, you can just make out the windows, where the rich people drink champagne and throw away better food than you've ever eaten. Someone tells you there's a swimming pool on board, heated even. You won't see it, of course. It's not for people like you. But it's nice to know it exists, in the same way it's nice to know some people don't get lice. Meals are served in a plain echoing dining room that smells aggressively of cabbage. You sit on a bench that wobbles. The plates are chipped, the cutlery is dented, and the stew tastes like it's been made entirely from root vegetables and longing. But you eat it anyway, because it's warm and filling and comes with a heel of bread that hasn't yet turned blue. Around you, children shriek and cough. An old man says the boat will make record time, A young couple argues in whispered Gaelic. Everyone is either pregnant, coughing, or both. Up above, in a different world, first-class passengers dine in rooms with crystal chandeliers and white-gloved waiters. They walk carpets thick enough to lose a shoe in. Their cabins have armchairs, electric heaters, and private balconies. Some even have bathtubs, real ones, with plumbing. You are aware of this only because someone in your room managed to sneak up a level before being chased back down. He says the rich drink wine with lunch and eat fish with names too long to pronounce. You pretend not to care. It's easier that way. Even so, there's a strange thrill in being here. This is the most modern ship in the world, they say. Unsinkable. The newspapers called it a triumph of engineering. The captain is a legend. The crew looks confident. The sea is calm. There's laughter above deck. A gramophone plays somewhere faintly in the distance, like the soundtrack to someone else's life. And despite the rust on the pipes and the chill in the air, and the nagging sense that your bunkmate has fleas, you allow yourself to believe, for just a moment, that this journey might be the start of something better. It won't be, but you don't know that yet. Life in steerage is exactly what it sounds like. The part of the ship that's closer to livestock than luxury. You live beneath the waterline, tucked between bulkheads and boiler rooms, with no windows and no illusions. The walls are metal, the floor is metal, the beds are metal too, though that's a generous term for what's essentially a glorified shelf with a threadbare pad and a wool blanket that smells like it was dried near a soup kitchen fire. You climb into it fully clothed because there's no space for modesty and no reason to pretend you're comfortable. The air is always damp. It clings to your skin, fills your lungs, and sits heavy in the corners of the room. You can taste it sometimes, a sour blend of unwashed bodies, coal smoke, and something vaguely fungal. There's no breeze, no circulation, just the constant rhythmic thrum of the engines somewhere below, reminding you that the only thing separating you from the ocean is a thin wall and blind faith in British shipbuilding. Every now and then, a pipe groans overhead. You don't know what it does. You just hope it isn't important. Privacy doesn't exist. Your cabin is a communal experiment in how little space humans need before they start resenting each other. There are no wardrobes, no drawers, not even hooks for your coat. You keep your belongings in a bag under the bed and your dignity somewhere back on the dock. At any given moment, someone is coughing, muttering in a language you don't understand, or attempting to change clothes behind a towel, held up by sheer optimism. Your bunkmate eats onions raw. Another snores like a dying ox. One man keeps a chicken in a crate by his feet. No one questions it. You try to use the lavatory, which is a stretch of the term toilet, beyond all recognition. It's down the hall shared by too many people, and built with a level of haste that suggests plumbing was an afterthought. There's a basin for washing up, stained with something green that you pretend is copper. The water is cold, the soap is communal, which means it's gone. There's no mirror, just a square of scratched metal that shows you a reflection you'd rather not recognise. If you want a hot bath, you'll have to bribe someone. With what, you're not sure. All you have is a crust of bread and some loose buttons. Despite it all, people try to make the best of it. Someone starts playing a fiddle in the hallway after dinner. Children chase each other between the bunks, shrieking with laughter until someone yells and the shrieking turns to crying. A few families pray together, others gamble. One man is carving a chest set out of soap, because that's what hope looks like down here. Tiny, lopsided knights that melt when left too close to the pipes. You don't talk about home much. No one does. Everyone down here is running from something. Hunger, war, creditors, the kind of poverty that eats through your soul like mildew through wood. There's not much to say about it that hasn't already been said in silence. Occasionally you make your way up to the third-class deck. It's open to the sea, barely. The railing is high and the view limited, but for a moment you can feel the wind on your face and pretend you're something more than ballast. The sun doesn't shine for long, Not at this time of year, but it's enough to remind you that light exists. You stare up toward the upper decks, where parasols and champagne glasses catch the sunlight. Somewhere above there's a gymnasium, a squash court, a Turkish bath. The closest thing you have to exercise is dodging the man who sneezes like he's trying to expel his lungs. The food isn't exactly terrible, though that might just be the hunger talking. Meals are served at long, scarred tables that have seen generations of stains. The stewards are brisk, indifferent, and move with the tired efficiency of men who know no one will ever tip them. Breakfast is porridge and tea. Lunch is stew and bread. Dinner is more stew, this time with something floating in it that might be meat or might be wishful thinking. Still, it's hot. You scrape your plate clean because you don't know when you'll eat again once you reach America. If you reach America. The ship may be unsinkable, but your luck rarely is. You've been told that steerage on the Titanic is a step up from most ships. There's electric lighting, ventilation, allegedly, even a smoking room, though it mostly just smells like old newspapers on fire. You try to believe that this is progress. You tell yourself, this is better than a coffin ship, better than steerage used to be. Maybe it is. But that's the kind of improvement you measure in fewer deaths, not more comfort. Titanic steerage is cleaner, perhaps, newer, but it still reminds you, in every clanging pipe and mildew-streaked wall, that you're not meant to stay here long. You are meant to pass through, quietly, unnoticed. And if things go wrong, you'll be exactly where they expect you to be. At the bottom, out of sight and out of time. You'll never walk the grand staircase. You'll never see the cherubs carved into the wood or the wrought iron balustrades that curl like vines beneath glass domed ceilings. That part of the ship isn't for you. It exists somewhere far above, in a parallel universe where dinner takes 5 courses and people wear gloves to eat soup. You've seen the staircase on postcards, in artist renderings meant to dazzle. To you, it may as well be the gates of heaven, unreachable, shimmering, and guarded by men with brass buttons and expressions that say no, you may not pass. What you get instead is the vague, ghostly sound of a string quartet drifting through pipes and floors, muffled by steel and distance. The music is beautiful, if you can hear it at all. It always seems to come when you're trying to sleep, wrapped in your thin blanket, listening to the coughs and mutters of a dozen strangers trying to forget where they are. For a second, you wonder if it's meant for you. Then someone drops a boot on the floor above, and the illusion dies. Above you, the wealthy glide across Persian rugs and sip cocktails in drawing rooms adorned with mahogany panels and electric chandeliers. Their cabins are larger than your entire flat back home, with furniture imported from Paris and bathrooms big enough to host a town meeting. They dine under golden light and talk about opera and inheritance and the strange American habit of electing their leaders. Some of them don't even know where steerage is. They assume it's somewhere near the coal. Their menus are printed daily in multiple languages because nothing ruins duck à l'orange quite like having to translate it yourself. Foie gras, quail in aspic, wine that costs more than your passage. For dessert, they eat poached pears with clotted cream, while you gnaw on bread so dense it might be weaponized. Their cutlery gleams. Yours is stained and mismatched. They dress for dinner. You eat in the same clothes you slept in, because there's nowhere to wash them and nowhere else to go. You sometimes catch glimpses of them in transit, a woman in a velvet hat walking briskly across the upper deck, or a gentleman lighting a cigar with a match that burns longer than most conversations in steerage. They look clean in a way you've never quite managed to be. Their shoes shine. Their voices are soft and composed. They smell like perfume, not damp wool and onion sweat. You feel invisible when they pass, not even beneath them, just beyond their understanding, like a concept too abstract to worry about. The ship itself is divided with surgical precision. You're not meant to see their world, and they're certainly not meant to see yours. There are physical barriers, locked gates, guarded stairwells, endless corridors that seem to loop back on themselves. But the real boundary is social, and it runs deeper than the keel. It's in the way crew members speak to them with deference, while grunting orders at you like you're part of the furniture. It's in the way even disasters, should they occur, will be distributed along class lines, like everything else. And they are disasters, waiting patiently. The ship is magnificent, yes, but it's also arrogant. There are fewer lifeboats than needed, because lifeboats are ugly and might make first-class passengers nervous. There are no lifebelts stored conveniently in steerage. There are no drills for the poor. Safety is a performance, meant to be seen but not practiced. You suspect this somewhere in the back of your mind, but you bury it. After all, what do you know? You're just a passenger, and not even the kind that gets counted properly. Still, you wonder. When the lights flicker slightly, as they sometimes do, you wonder how quickly the staff would escort the Astors or the Duff Gordons to the boats, and how long it would take someone to remember you exist. You think about the doors that are always locked, the ladders that lead nowhere, and the way no one ever really explains the procedures, just in case procedures become necessary. You've heard the words unsinkable enough times that they've lost their shape, like a prayer whispered too often by someone who doesn't believe it. At night, you lie awake and think about the deck chairs, arranged in neat rows far above, the promenade where people stroll without urgency, the soft glow of electric sconces against imported wallpaper. You imagine what it must be like to feel certain that if something went wrong, someone would take your hand and lead you to safety. Not yell at you to move faster, not shove you into a hallway, not leave you to guess. But that's not your world. It never was. The Titanic is a city, and cities have hierarchies. Yours starts several floors below proper civilization, in a space designed for containment, not comfort. You are meant to be carried, not catered to, transported, not protected. And when the cold comes, as it surely will, no violin music will follow you into the dark. There were warnings, of course, lots of them. 6 by the time the sun set on April 14th, maybe more. Ships ahead of Titanic sent telegraphs crackling through the ether, calmly announcing what everyone already suspected but hoped to ignore. There was ice in the water, big pieces, enough to matter, enough to kill. And while these messages reached the bridge, where the officers in crisp uniforms nodded and made polite notes, they never reached you. Not because the telegraph was broken or the signal was unclear, but because no one thought you needed to know. After all, what were you going to do about it? Complain? Down in steerage, there's no bulletin board, no passenger briefings, no voice over the loudspeaker. Not that Titanic has one, letting you know that the ship is hurtling through a known ice field at night with all engines running. You learn nothing, you sense nothing. Maybe the air feels colder than usual. Maybe the stars seem especially sharp in the sky, the kind of cold clarity that bites your nose, even when you're below deck. But mostly, you carry on, utterly unaware that the sea ahead has turned into a graveyard waiting for names to etch into it. The officers knew. The wireless operators knew. The captain probably knew. But knowledge, as always, bends to the will of those who think themselves untouchable. The Titanic was already behind schedule, and speed was a form of pride. Slowing down would mean admitting the North Atlantic wasn't something you could tame with white tablecloths and grand pianos. And so the engines kept pushing, pistons driving forward, with the blind confidence of industrialized hubris. Full steam ahead, because what's the point of building the biggest ship in history if you don't use it to show off? Meanwhile, up in first class, they discuss the iceberg warnings like you might discuss an unwelcome breeze. Interesting, but not pressing. The dinner service went on uninterrupted. The orchestra played softly. A few passengers raised eyebrows over the number of ice messages coming through the wireless room, but they were quickly reassured. After all, this ship was unsinkable. So unsinkable, in fact, that the lifeboats had been designed for form, not function. Most were half filled during drills, if they were used at all. Their real purpose was to satisfy regulations, not to save lives. And you? You were 3 decks below that conversation, eating boiled potatoes and mystery meat, listening to a child wail in the next cabin. You might have been playing cards, or scrubbing your shirt in a shared basin, or trying to sleep on your too-thin mattress as a pipe hissed and clanked above your head. The word iceberg never entered your mind. Why would it? This was a modern ship, a floating marvel. They told you it was the safest thing afloat. They had printed it in the papers, said it with straight faces and confident nods. And you, like most people, without access to engineers or lawyers, believed them. Even if someone had whispered to you that there was danger ahead, what could you have done? The doors to the upper decks were locked. The stairwells were guarded. You didn't have the freedom to wander up and ask the captain for clarification. You were steerage, a human shipment. Your movement was restricted, your questions unwelcome. Titanic wasn't a democracy. It was a tiered kingdom of steel and steam, and you lived in the basement. There's something darkly comic about it. All the modern technology in the world, and yet the most vital decision of the night boils down to this. Go slower or don't. Listen or don't. And the people making those decisions were sipping liqueurs and adjusting their cravats, while a wall of ancient ice drifted silently into the path of their floating monument. It's the kind of irony that only history can appreciate fully. You, of course, will have far less time to enjoy the joke. Hours before the collision, another ship, the Californian, had stopped for the night, surrounded by ice. They tried to send a warning, but Titanic's wireless operator cut them off mid-message, snapping that he was busy relaying passenger telegrams. Rich people were still paying to tell friends they'd just dined with the captain, or expect to reach New York ahead of schedule. That's what was prioritised, not the warning, not the ice, not you. The sea was calm, eerily so. No waves breaking on the ice, no swell to give movement shape, just stillness and stars and the illusion of control. A perfect night to pretend everything was fine. A perfect night to sail directly into catastrophe. It happens just after midnight. You're asleep or nearly there, tucked under your blanket in a cabin that smells like feet and damp wool. The ship hums with mechanical certainty, the gentle vibration of engines beneath your mattress like a lullaby in Morse code. Then something changes, a jolt, subtle but sharp enough to snap you halfway into consciousness. You blink at the ceiling, not sure whether you dreamed it. Then comes the sound, a grinding, scraping groan that drags along the hull like someone tearing a sheet of iron in half. At first, no one panics. In steerage, strange noises are just part of the ambience. Pipes knock, metal shifts, people cough like dying donkeys. Most passengers roll over and pull the blanket tighter. Some mutter, a few curse, someone laughs nervously. You sit up, uneasy but unsure why. The ship is still moving. The lights are still on. That horrible grinding sound has faded into silence. It can't have been that serious, right? You stumble out into the corridor in your shirt sleeves. The air feels colder than before. That might just be your imagination. A few others are standing in the hallway, whispering. One man says he felt the ship turn slightly. Another claims it hit something. Ice, maybe. A steward passes by and tells everyone to go back to bed. Just a precaution, he says. His voice is cheerful, tight, and far too quick. That's never a good sign. You've heard that tone before. It's the one people use when they're trying to convince themselves. Not you. More stewards appear, more of them than usual, moving quickly, avoiding eye contact. They say the same thing. Everything's fine. Stay calm. Go back to your cabins. And for now, most people do. Because what else can they do? You're at the bottom of the ship. There's nowhere to go but up. And you're not allowed up. You don't even know how to get there. Besides, it's the Titanic, the unsinkable ship. That phrase has been burned into your mind like a spell, and spells are supposed to protect you. You return to your bunk, but sleep doesn't come. The engine noise has changed, softer now, slower. You can feel it in your bones, that quiet wrongness. The ship is no longer surging ahead with blind confidence. It's hesitating, pausing, deciding what kind of disaster it wants to be. Somewhere far above, the captain is being handed a note. It says the ship has struck an iceberg, that water is pouring into the forward holds, that the ship will not stay afloat. He knows now. You still don't. The cold begins to creep in, slowly, methodically, as if it's testing you. You tell yourself it's just the night air. Ships get drafty, but your breath is visible now, a faint mist in the dark. Water is beginning to fill the lowest compartments, cargo holds, mail rooms, boiler rooms. There are men down there who won't make it out. Firemen, stokers, trimmers, swallowed in the first minutes and never seen again. But you don't know that. All you know is that the walls feel damp, and the floor has a strange, soft give to it, like something shifting beneath your feet. Somewhere a child starts crying. That's when you realise the ship is tilting, just slightly, but unmistakably. It's not dramatic yet, not cinematic. Just a few degrees, but enough to make a cup slide across a table. Enough to turn that subtle unease into something sharper. The stewards have stopped smiling. Their footsteps echo faster now. One tells you to dress warmly, but not to worry. Just a precaution. Always just a precaution. You begin to hear footsteps on the upper decks, boots on stairs, doors slamming, voices rising. The air is no longer still. It's crowded with tension, with the kind of quiet panic that spreads faster than fire. You try to reach the next deck, but the stairwell is roped off. You're told to wait. Wait where it's safe. Wait where you're told. Someone says they're unlocking the gates soon. That help is on the way. That everything is under control. The water reaches E-deck within 20 minutes, but you're not on E-deck, you're lower. It will take longer to get to you, and that, they will say later, is part of the tragedy. That some people had time and some didn't, and no one managed either particularly well. There's still no official announcement, no explanation, no instruction. Just fragments of overheard conversations, glimpses of fear on faces trying very hard to appear calm. The crew knows more than they're saying. You suspect that, but it doesn't help. Eventually, you hear a word passed from mouth to mouth like a rumour. Lifeboats. You don't know how many there are. You don't know where they are. You've never seen one up close. You were never told the plan, because you were never part of the plan. You begin to understand, dimly, that something is very wrong. But it's not until your boots splash down onto a floor that should be dry that your stomach finally turns cold. You look down. Water. Only a few inches, but more than enough. It's seeping under the door, creeping along the corridor like a living thing. You step back, heart pounding. It's silent. No rushing, no roar, just a quiet spread of inevitability. Somewhere far above, the ship still sparkles with electric light. People are still laughing, still sipping brandy. But here, in the cold guts of the vessel, the truth is already rising around your ankles, and the crew is still telling you everything's fine. It doesn't feel like a disaster yet. That's the cruel part. The lights are still on. The walls are still intact. There's no siren, no crashing, no dramatic voice calling everyone to action. Just a slow unravelling, a fraying at the edges of normal. People shuffle through the corridors, not in chaos, but in confusion. The kind of dazed movement you see when a building's on fire and no one wants to be the first to yell it. The Titanic isn't sinking, not officially. It's just experiencing difficulties. It's just precautionary. That's what the stewards keep saying, and that's what makes it worse. The crew's smiles have vanished. Their voices are tight, clipped, repeated like scripts read too many times. They move fast but speak slowly, which is never a good sign. Some passengers try to joke, others try to pray, most just wait, and waiting feels dangerous now. You begin to notice the water differently, not just as a puddle on the floor, but as a fact that no one can explain away. It's pooling in corners, running down steps, seeping in from places it was never meant to reach. This isn't a leak, it's an invasion. You don't know how deep it's gotten. No one tells you. The stewards just keep guiding you through passageways that lead nowhere. The locked gates appear again, this time without explanation. You ask to go up. They tell you to wait. You ask again. They walk away. Somewhere nearby, a child wails and a man mutters a prayer in a language you don't recognise. The ship is still upright, still lit, still afloat, but something inside it is breaking, and you can feel it more clearly with every breath. Eventually, the realisation begins to settle in like cold seeping through your clothes. This is no longer about discomfort or inconvenience. The ship is in real trouble. People begin to speak louder, ask more questions, move with a different urgency. The water on the floor rises to your ankles now, icy and immediate. No one is saying the word sinking, but they don't have to. You can see it in their eyes, in the stiff backs, in the way no one makes eye contact anymore. The panic doesn't arrive all at once. It trickles in, just like the seawater. Someone starts banging on a locked gate, demanding to be let through. Another shouts for his family. A young woman begins sobbing, then wailing as her friends try to calm her. It doesn't work. The crew remains vague. Please remain calm. There's no need to panic. We're waiting for instructions, all delivered with the hollow rhythm of people trying not to scream. The gates don't open. You try to find another route, up a service stair, through the dining area, anywhere that isn't chest deep in rising doubt. One hallway leads to another locked door. Another leads to a stairwell crowded with people pressing upward. Some succeed, most don't. Arguments break out, accents clash, elbows fly. Every minute, the air grows colder and the water climbs higher. You're wet now, fully soaked from the knees down. No one bothers to dry off, there's no point. A few crew members try to maintain order, but they're outnumbered and out of answers. One tries to tell a crowd to return to their cabins. Someone else shoves past him. Another steward is openly sweating. They're losing control, or maybe they never had it. Either way, you're on your own now. A man tries to smash a gate with a boot heel. Someone else throws a chair. A child slips and hits the floor with a sound that makes everyone flinch. The water isn't subtle anymore. It moves with weight, with presence, with purpose. You manage to find an open stairwell, already crowded. The press of bodies makes it hard to move. People are shouting, pushing, lifting children overhead. You cling to the railing and pull yourself upward, one step at a time. Each footfall sloshes, each breath comes with effort. When you finally reach the next level, it feels like a victory, until you realise it's more of the same. More locked doors, more confusion, more people with no idea where they're supposed to be. There's a new sound now, not the scrape of ice or the hush of water, but something worse. The quiet groan of a ship under strain, metal bending where it shouldn't. A sound that doesn't belong in a place, that's supposed to float. A few people hear it and fall silent. Others don't even notice. They're too busy yelling for directions that no one's giving. By now the lights are flickering, only slightly, actually only sometimes, but enough to remind you that even the illusion of safety is on borrowed time. The Titanic isn't just sinking, it's disintegrating from the inside out. No alarms, no countdown, no explanation, just a growing certainty, rising as steadily as the water beneath your feet, that your place in the world is the lowest one. And when the ship goes down, you'll be right where they left you, cold, confused, and behind a locked gate. They call it a safety measure, a precaution, something about orderly evacuation procedures. But what it really means is that you're trapped, locked behind metal gates and swinging barriers, held in place by crew members who won't meet your eyes and won't answer your questions. third-class passengers are not allowed to flood the stairwells. That's the word they use, flood, as if you're not already knee-deep in seawater. As if you're a problem to be managed, not a life to be saved. No one says it outright, but the message is clear. First class gets priority. Second class, if there's time. Third class, wait your turn. And your turn might never come. You try to press forward, up a stairwell you've never been allowed to use, only to find a locked gate, and a uniformed man standing behind it like a priest guarding a temple. He doesn't raise his voice. He just says, "Stay calm, please." He doesn't open the gate. He doesn't move. More people arrive, wet, scared, shouting in half a dozen languages. Children are crying. A man is shaking the bars. A woman is screaming at a crew member, demanding to know where her husband went. The answers don't come. The steward says they're waiting for instructions, that there's a plan, that you'll all be brought up soon, but you've already been lied to too many times tonight. You can hear it in his voice. Tight, tired, rehearsed. You don't believe him anymore. No one does. You look around and see the futility written on every face. People pacing like caged animals. People praying, sobbing, breaking down. A few still try to reason with the crew, but reason has no place here. Order does. Not safety, not fairness, just order. The kind that keeps poor people in their place, even as the ship they're on collapses beneath them. This isn't about survival. It's about optics. No chaos in the corridors, no hysterical mobs on the promenade deck. Let the richer passengers walk calmly to their lifeboats without the unpleasant sight of desperation. It's not just one gate, it's many. Wrought iron in some places, chains in others. Some are simply locked doors with no explanation. You try one handle after another, but they're all sealed. There's no clear direction, no signs, just corridors that circle back on themselves and stairwells that go nowhere. Even if you had a map, it wouldn't help. The Titanic wasn't designed to be escaped from. It was designed to impress, to contain, to control. You find a way around one barrier, crawling through a laundry chute left open by someone in a panic. It leads to a hallway where the walls sweat and the light bulbs flicker in their sockets. Others are doing the same, finding gaps, slipping past inattentive crew, trying to claw their way upward through a ship that was never meant to let them climb. You're soaked now, fully. Every step sloshes. Every breath steams in the freezing air. You no longer feel cold, just heavy, like your limbs belong to someone else. There are moments of hope, a door left unguarded, a stairwell with no one watching. But even these glimpses are short-lived. At the next level, another gate, another uniform, another reminder that the closer you get to safety, the harder it becomes to reach it. Someone nearby tries to bribe a steward. It doesn't work. Someone else throws a punch. That doesn't work either. The gate remains shut and the steward pulls out a whistle. Not to call for help, but to make noise. To drown you out. Eventually you stop asking. You stop explaining. You just push. When the next group surges toward a barrier, you move with them. Not because you think it will work, but because it's the only thing left to do. The crowd presses forward, shouting, straining, heaving against the gate, until the hinges groan. The steward on the other side backs away, not from compassion, from fear, and just like that the gate gives. Not in some triumphant burst, but like something old and rusted, finally snapping under weight it was never meant to bear. You spill upward, gasping, dragging yourself into the next deck like a half-drowned rat. Around you, others do the same. But it's not freedom. Not yet. Just another corridor. Another stretch of metal walls and slick floors and unanswered questions. But for the first time, you're moving in the direction that matters. Not because you were allowed, because you forced it. And this, you begin to understand, is how survival works here. Not through plans, not through fairness, but through momentum, through desperation, through the sheer, stubborn refusal to die where they left you. Because they weren't going to save you. Not the officers, not the crew, not the ship itself. They locked you down because your panic made them uncomfortable, because your fear didn't fit the brochure, because you were inconvenient. And when the Titanic goes down, it won't be because there weren't enough lifeboats. It'll be because the people who needed them most were never meant to reach them. You've made it past the gate. You don't remember how exactly, whether it was a mob surge, a broken lock, or a guard who simply gave up. But you're through, soaked, shivering, and breathing like you've run a mile through fog. You press forward into the maze of steel and shadow that lies between you and the upper decks. You don't know where you're going. You only know it has to be up. Up is where the lifeboats are. Up is where people live. Down is filling with water. Your feet slap against the cold floor. The wet fabric of your clothes clings to your skin, dragging you down like a second layer of failure. The corridors twist like intestines, all rivets and echoes. You pass closed doors, open closets, stray luggage, and people moving in the wrong directions. Some are pushing forward like you. Some are lost and circling back. Others are frozen in place, staring blankly at the wall like their minds broke before the ship did. There are signs, but they're meaningless. Aft stairwell. E-deck forward. Crew only. All of them point to places you've never seen, and none of them say the one word you're looking for. Exit. You try to follow the sound of voices, but the metal walls bounce everything back at you. Footsteps echo off pipes. Shouts come from nowhere, and everywhere at once. There is no clear path, only movement. And movement, at this point, feels better than thought. You try a stairwell and are met with a group pressing back down, wild-eyed and breathless. Blocked, someone says. Can't get through. Another says there's a lifeboat station up top, but it's full. A third is crying so hard they can't speak. You turn and push down another hall. The floor here is drier, briefly, falsely reassuring. Around the next corner, another set of stairs. You climb 2 flights before hitting another barrier. Roped off. No crew in sight. Just empty space and the metallic stench of cold water rising behind you. It becomes clear that the ship was never meant to be escaped from below. These decks were designed to contain, to funnel, to isolate. The engineers who built Titanic were good at architecture, but better at hierarchy. Even now, as water claims entire corridors, you feel the design working against you. Every corner brings the same sinking realization. You're not supposed to be here. Not just in this moment, but in this world. The ship, like the system that built it, was never meant to make room for you when things went wrong. You find yourself in a galley next, or what's left of one. Pans scattered, the smell of something long burnt into the walls. A woman is kneeling by a crate, holding a child who doesn't seem to be breathing. You pause, helpless, useless, and keep moving. The ship groans around you, a low sound like strained metal and distant thunder. Lights flicker, pipes hiss. Somewhere above you hear a crash, followed by shouting. You're not sure whether it's rescue or collapse. At this point, it could be both. Eventually, you find a stair that seems promising, wider, newer, flanked by cleaner walls, and a brass railing polished down by better shoes. You climb. The air changes subtly. Less mould, more varnish. You pass into a deck that's clearly not meant for you. The floors are carpeted, though now soaked and muddy. The lights are warmer, the wallpaper is floral, and the people here are calmer. Confused, yes, but calmer. First and second class passengers milling near a lifeboat station under the direction of officers with clipboards. They're being counted, spoken to, guided. You approach, half collapsing against a wall, dripping onto the rug. An officer blocks your path. "Where's your cabin, sir?" he asks, but not kindly. Not like you're a person. More like you're a dog who wandered into the dining room. You try to answer, try to explain, but he's already moving on, already turning to someone in lace gloves and furs who looks more like they belong. You watch as they're helped into life belts and led to boats. You are not offered one. Someone else tries to cut in, another third-class face, pale and frantic. The officer raises his voice this time. Step back. There's no scene, no fight, just quiet rejection, like being erased in slow motion. The boat fills, it lowers. You watch it go, half empty, because protocol won't allow someone like you to sit beside someone like them. You don't have the right accent, the right coat, the right timing. You wander again, another stairwell, another hallway. It feels endless, like the ship is expanding as it sinks, offering more dead ends than directions. Your body aches, your clothes are lead, your breath fogs the air, and your fingers no longer close properly. You try to focus, to think, to remember the layout, but you are never given a map, only rules. Stay below, don't wander, don't ask. No one is coming for you, not because they can't, because they don't think they need to. You're not part of the plan, not on the list, not in the numbers. You're excess, overflow. And so you keep moving, not toward rescue, but simply away from the water, hoping there's still a door left open. There are lifeboats, that much is true. You see them finally, after climbing more stairs than you can count, after passing through hallways soaked with seawater and panic. They line the upper deck like an afterthought, small pale shapes hanging from cranes, swaying slightly in the night wind. They look far too fragile, far too few. You expected something sturdier, something ready? What you see are rowboats dressed up to impress inspectors, not save lives. First-class passengers are being guided toward them with quiet efficiency. Officers with clipboards call out names. Stewards carry coats, hold lanterns, speak gently. Women are told it's just a precaution. They step into the boats with shaky grace, their gowns wet at the hem, their hands clutching muffs and handbags. Some of them hesitate. Others weep. A few glance nervously at the sea, then at the deck, as if trying to decide which is worse. None of them are pushed. None of them are told to hurry. And when the boats lower with empty seats, no one says a word. You arrive at the edge of the scene, like an uninvited ghost. No one addresses you. No one offers a lifebelt. You stand dripping, shivering, watching boat after boat descend half full. There's no system here, not for you. You ask an officer where to go and he waves you off without looking. Too late, he mutters, as if the time to care expired an hour ago. You ask again. He tells you to stand back. You try to explain that you're not alone, that someone's still coming or lost or just behind you. He moves on. A man near you tries to climb into a lifeboat. He's shouted down. Women and children only. But not all the boats are following that rule. Some are boarding whoever they can find. Others are following social codes to the letter. A steward allows a young boy from second class to board, then blocks the mother of 5 beside you. The line between life and death is drawn not in strength, or need or order, but in manners. It isn't about who deserves a seat. It's about who looks like they were always meant to have one. You don't see many third-class passengers on the deck. Most are still trapped below, wandering the steel intestines of the ship, or pressing at gates that won't open. A few have made it here, like you. They stand back watching, waiting for an opening that never comes. No one tells you where to go. No one tells you when. The boats are for passengers. And you, despite having a ticket, are not what they meant by that. You catch sight of one boat being loaded hurriedly. Chaos, shouting, people climbing over each other. An officer fires his pistol into the air. The sound cracks like judgment. Everyone freezes. The boat is lowered, wobbly and over capacity. You could have made that one, maybe, if you'd pushed harder. But pushing is what third class gets scolded for. Pushing is unseemly. Pushing is dangerous. So instead, you hesitated. And now it's gone. Another lifeboat goes down, with only 20 people in it. You count them, numb and furious. It could hold twice that, maybe more. But the officer in charge wasn't going to argue with the Countess about whether a coal-streaked Irishman should be allowed to sit beside her, not when decorum still mattered more than death. They'll say later that no one realised how bad it was, that no one thought the ship would actually go down. But you know better. You've seen the water, felt it climb your legs, watched it climb walls. The ship is dying, and these boats are floating away like pieces of it being ripped off and saved. People begin to scream now. Not loud, not hysterical, just desperate. A low chorus of too late understanding, mothers crying out for children they can't find, men shouting at officers who don't answer. Somewhere nearby someone collapses, someone else leaps into a boat without permission and is dragged out. The lanterns flicker, the wind is sharp, the sky is full of stars and the sea reflects them with eerie stillness. It would be beautiful if it weren't trying to kill you. The ship lists harder to one side. You can feel it in your knees, in your stomach. The angle of the deck is no longer subtle. You have to brace yourself to walk. Another boat goes down, and again you're not in it. You begin to understand that you never were. Not really. Your name was never on a list. Your seat was never reserved. You are the overflow, the afterthought, the part of history that doesn't get carved into plaques. You don't know how many boats are left. It doesn't matter. The crew has stopped making announcements. There is no plan anymore, just instinct and inertia. You wander to the railing and look down. Cold black water yawns below, indifferent and wide. You see a boot floating near the surface, a hat, a piece of wood, and somewhere in your chest, a quiet voice says the thing no one wants to admit. There aren't enough boats, and there never were, and you were never meant to be in one. You don't remember the exact moment it happens. Maybe you jump, maybe you fall. Maybe the railing gives way, or the deck tilts just a little too far, and your body makes the decision for you. It doesn't matter. 1 second, you're above the water, staring down into the void. The next, you're inside it, and it is nothing like you imagined. The water is not cold. Cold is a blanket in the wrong season. Cold is fingers without gloves. This is something else entirely. This is pain. This is violence. It hits you like a wall, then folds over you like concrete. It drives itself into your skin, into your mouth, your ears, your lungs. It isn't even wet, just sharp, immediate, and absolute. You try to scream, but your body seizes. The sound dies before it begins. Your lungs contract like fists. Your chest locks up. You go under. The darkness beneath the surface is thick, endless, disorienting. You don't know which way is up. The shock is so complete that your limbs forget what they're for. You flail, but there's no coordination, no control. You're not swimming. You're not floating. You're just sinking, dragged down by wet clothes, numb muscles, and the weight of disbelief. The sea is not a place. It's an erasure. You're not in the water. You are being unmade by it. You surface once, maybe twice, gasping with the instincts of something that still wants to live. Even if your brain has already begun to shut down. The air burns. Your throat is raw. You hear screaming. Not your own. Other voices. Dozens of them. Some close, some far. All of them ragged and desperate. A chorus of people learning too late that the worst thing about the Atlantic isn't its depth. It's its indifference. Your body begins to betray you quickly. The water is just above freezing, maybe 28 degrees Fahrenheit. Thanks to the salt, you think you can tread water, but your legs cramp. Your arms ache. The shock of it all is still reverberating through your skull. Hypothermia doesn't wait politely. It arrives fast and brutal. Your extremities are the first to go. You can't feel your fingers. Your knees stop bending properly. Everything that once obeyed you is now mutinying one joint at a time. You try to find something to hold on to. A piece of wreckage, a board, anything. You swim, or think you do, toward a dark shape bobbing ahead. Someone else grabs it first. You cling anyway, gasping, heaving, too cold to form words. You share it in silence, each of you too far gone to speak. Just breathing, just shaking, just waiting. The board isn't enough for both of you. You pretend not to notice. They pretend not to care. The water doesn't notice either. It never has. Around you, the ocean is full of people, some screaming, some silent, some floating wrong, a few still calling for help. There are no lifeboats nearby. Most have rowed off into the dark. You can see the shapes, black outlines moving away from the wreckage like lifeboats fleeing guilt. The ones still near are overloaded or rowing in slow, indecisive circles, terrified of being swamped. No one is coming back. The sea is your only companion now. You begin to feel tired, which is the cruelest part. Not panicked, not frantic, just deeply, utterly exhausted. Your heart is slowing, your breath shallow. The pain starts to fade, replaced by a calm that feels almost like relief. You know this is bad. You know that's how it works. First comes the shock, then the numbness, then the sleep. You try to fight it. You try to stay awake, but your eyelids flutter, your head dips. The cold is no longer something outside of you. It is you. Your thoughts fragment. You try to remember your name, your family, why you boarded this ship in the first place, but the images slip away before they form. You focus instead on tiny things. The way the stars look so close, the sound of the water against your ears, the gentle rocking of the wood beneath your chest. Your body is shutting down system by system, like a house losing power, one light at a time. You're still floating, barely. Your fingers are stiff, your legs won't respond, and the cold has hollowed out your chest like a picked-over carcass. But you're conscious, at least in the loosest sense of the word. You see the sky above you, full of stars. You hear distant voices fading one by one. Your mind clings to fragments, faces, names, the warmth of bread, a tune half remembered. They drift in and out, just out of reach. And then for a strange, quiet moment, nothing happens. No screaming, no splashing, just silence. You're suspended in it, weightless, breathless, and unbearably cold. You know what's coming, but for now, you're simply waiting for your body to let go. There's nothing dramatic about it. No final stand, no poetic fade into darkness. Just a slow, methodical unravelling. Hypothermia is not an assassin. It doesn't strike. It seeps. It waits. It wears you down until there's simply nothing left to resist with. And by the time you fully understand what's happening, you're already too far gone to do anything about it. The fight isn't loud. It's quiet. The kind of quiet that feels like forgetting. Your fingers stop working first. Not all at once, but with a strange clumsiness that feels more annoying than alarming. You fumble with the edge of your coat. You try to wipe your nose, but your arm doesn't quite respond. The cold isn't sharp anymore. It's heavy. It dulls everything. Your limbs, your thoughts, even your panic. You're shaking, but not enough. Shivering is how your body tries to warm itself. When that stops, it means you've passed another threshold. One more door closing behind you. Your breath comes shallower now, slower. You're not gasping anymore. You're just inhaling as best you can, each breath colder than the last. The muscles in your chest ache, then loosen. Your jaw won't stay shut. Your teeth stop chattering. Your lips don't sting anymore. They're just numb. You look down at your hands and don't recognize them. They're pale, stiff, curling slightly inward, like they're retreating into themselves. You try to move your fingers. Nothing happens. Time breaks apart. It's no longer measured in minutes or seconds, but in waves of sensation, or the loss of them. Your legs feel distant. Your face doesn't feel like part of your body. You blink, and it takes effort. Someone nearby moans a long, low sound that fades into the wind. It might be the last thing they ever say. You don't turn to look. Not because you don't care, because turning requires energy you no longer have. You're still holding on to something, some piece of wreckage, a floating plank, a half-submerged crate, but your grip is failing. You don't feel the cold in your fingers anymore. You don't feel anything in your fingers anymore. Your body is pulling blood away from your extremities, trying to protect your core. It's a losing strategy, but it's all it has left. Your heartbeat slows, your eyelids lower. You're awake technically, but it feels like a formality. You start to feel warm. That's one of the final tricks. A wave of false heat spreads through your chest, your arms, your neck. For a moment, you think it's the sunrise. Rescue. Some final burst of adrenaline. But it's not. It's your body giving up, misfiring, sending one last lie through your nerves. You want to take off your coat. You don't have the strength, but if you did, you probably would. That's how the cold kills, with kindness, with confusion, with warmth that isn't real. There's no peace in it. No cinematic drift into the deep. Your limbs twitch as the nerves shut down, one by one. Your head jerks, your jaw clenches. The last few spasms of a body that still remembers, dimly, that it wanted to live. But the cold has taken over now. Your consciousness begins to flicker. Not in a sudden drop, but in a slow dimming. You stop registering the cries around you. You forget who you are. You forget that you were ever trying to survive in the first place. You might last 10 minutes, 15 if you're young, lucky or stubborn. Some lasted longer, but they were exceptions, not examples. The average third-class passenger in the water died within a quarter of an hour, no matter how strong they were, no matter how determined. The sea is patient. It doesn't have to rush. You, meanwhile, are running out of time, blood, and breath. You're becoming a statistic, slowly, steadily, without ceremony. People imagine that dying in water is loud, but it isn't. It's muffled, it's personal. There are no speeches, no dramatic music, just quiet and cold, and the gradual slipping away of every part of you that once reached outward. You don't notice when your hands let go. You don't register the moment your chin sinks to your chest. Your body is still, your eyes half-lidded, your thoughts empty. You don't drift peacefully. You twitch, and then you don't. Someone nearby might see you briefly. They'll remember your face, or maybe not. Maybe they're already too far gone themselves. Either way, you vanish. Not beneath the waves, there are too many bodies floating already, but into the dark silence that follows your final breath. And in that silence, the sea holds you. Not gently, not cruelly, just indifferently. There's no name attached to your death, no headline, no story. Just a body in the water, one of hundreds. When the lifeboats return in the morning, too late, too few, they'll find corpses. Dozens of them. Frozen. Still. Mouths open, eyes clouded. And yours will be among them. Not because you failed, but because the system around you decided your life was the least worth saving. The RMS Carpathia arrives at 4 a.m, 4 hours too late. By then, the sea is no longer filled with voices. It's filled with bodies, still, quiet. Dozens of them floating on the surface like fallen leaves, arms bent at wrong angles, eyes frozen open in disbelief. Some look like they're sleeping, others don't. The screams have stopped, the splashing has stopped, the panic has stopped. What's left is aftermath, silent, vast and irreversible. The Carpathia wasn't even close. It had to steam through ice fields, at dangerous speeds, ignoring the same warnings Titanic had. The captain did what he could, and he did it fast. But even fast wasn't enough. Distance and time don't bend for good intentions. When the rescue ship finally reaches the coordinates, all it finds is ruin. Frantic lifeboats, shivering survivors, and a graveyard made of seawater and silence. The ones still alive are pulled from lifeboats, bundled in blankets, handed cups of brandy or broth. Some are in shock, some are weeping, some are silent. None of them are from steerage. Not really, not the way you were. The ones who made it this far are women and children mostly. First and second class mostly. Survivors who had space, or money, or the good fortune to be noticed. The rest of you are still floating just beneath the surface, close enough to see, Easier not to look. You're not there to watch the rescue unfold, of course. You're part of the debris now. One of the unnamed, one of the stills. If your body's found, it may be pulled aboard by a rescue team with gloved hands and tight expressions. If not, you'll sink eventually, taken under by the slow, impersonal tug of the Atlantic. They'll say your name at an inquest, maybe. A clerk will write it down. A priest might mention it. But no one will know who you were, only what number you became. The lifeboats are lowered again, not to save anyone, but to collect. A few men row out into the quiet, lifting the bodies of the recently dead. They wrap them in canvas when they can, tag them with numbers when they remember. A few are children, a few are dressed in suits, many are barely clothed, stripped by the water or the dead hands of someone more desperate. The sea doesn't care who wore what, it leaves everyone equal. On deck, survivors stare down into the water, waiting for answers that never come. Some call out for loved ones who will not answer. Others just watch, hollow-eyed, as each boat returns with fewer people than it left with. There are no reunions, just acknowledgements, a nod, a breath, a hand over a mouth. One woman collapses, another vomits. There is no joy in being saved, only the bitter relief of not being among the missing. There is no count, not really. Numbers are guessed, argued over, scribbled onto forms. Between confusion, miscommunication, and outright denial, no one knows for sure how many were lost. Estimates hover around 1,500. A few dozen survived from the water. A handful. The rest died within minutes. The Carpathia hauls aboard 705 survivors and sails for New York. It leaves behind the wreckage, and you. They say it was the greatest peacetime maritime disaster in history. They say lessons were learned, laws were changed, lifeboats added, warnings heeded, but none of that matters to you. You don't benefit from hindsight. You don't live to see the reforms. You are not a catalyst. You are not a martyr. You are what history calls the cost. You paid it without consent. The survivors go on to tell their stories. They write memoirs, give interviews. Some are haunted, some move on. Some become footnotes, but they get to speak. They get to be heard. You do not. You do not speak of the locked gates, the blocked stairwells, the lifeboats you were denied. No one gives you that space. Not in the papers, not in the testimony, not even in the retellings, where you're replaced with fictional characters, more photogenic and conveniently located. You bob in the water a while longer, if you're lucky. Some bodies are recovered days later. Some are never found. You become part of the Atlantic now, one of many. Your face fades, your story disappears. Your death is simplified, anonymized, squeezed into an asterisk beneath the headlines. The people who mattered lived. The people who didn't became numbers. And even now, as the Carpathia cuts through the dawn, with its decks full of shivering passengers wrapped in blankets, you remain behind. Somewhere out there, just beneath the surface, you are still drifting, still cold, still waiting for a rescue that was never meant for you. When the hearings begin, the Iceberg takes centre stage. It becomes the villain, the unfeeling force of nature, the thing no one could have seen coming, except for the people who did, except for the wireless operators who received multiple ice warnings that night, except for the captains of nearby ships who slowed down, except for the White Star Line executives who knew how many lifeboats were missing before the ship ever left port. But all of that gets buried beneath one frozen slab of plausible deniability. They say it was a tragedy. They say it was unavoidable. They say the crew did their best. But no one wants to talk about how the gates were locked, how the lifeboats launched half empty, or how women and children first became first-class women, and maybe their children, if there's time. The system didn't break. It functioned exactly as it was meant to, in favour of those at the top. What failed was the illusion that this was ever going to be fair. The inquiries are polite. British officers defend their American counterparts, and vice versa. The questions are rehearsed. The outrage is selective. Everyone agrees it's sad. Everyone agrees something should change. Eventually. Just not now, not urgently. The fact that over 1,500 people died becomes a matter of procedure. Dissected, categorized, filed away. Diagrams are drawn, testimonies edited. The whole thing is turned into paperwork. There are apologies, of course, carefully worded, strategically vague. Regret is expressed in abstract terms, not for the people lost, but for the unfortunate event. Deep sorrow. Regrettable loss of life. Necessary lessons. They don't apologise for locking the gates. They don't apologise for undertraining the crew. They apologise for the inconvenience of bad press. Some people do lose their jobs, briefly. Some rules are changed, eventually. But the men who made the decisions, the ones who prioritised aesthetics over safety, who limited lifeboats to preserve deck space, who convinced themselves that the Titanic was too grand to fail, they retire with their reputations largely intact. They go on to build more ships, to hold more meetings, to be buried in marked graves. You are not buried at all. No one reads your name at the inquiries, no one cross-examines your ghost. You're not a witness, you're a statistic, if that. Your death is not a mystery to be solved, it's an inconvenience to be minimised. The official reports will note the class divisions, the survival rates, the structural flaws, but none of them will mention how it felt to be held behind a locked gate while cold water climbed the stairs. None will say outright that steerage was sacrificed for order. Instead, they'll say the officers were overwhelmed, that conditions were chaotic, that decisions had to be made. These words are used like life rafts, big enough to carry guilt safely past the truth. And as the survivors are paraded through interviews and public sympathy, no one wants to hear from the families who stayed home and got telegrams instead of answers. Eventually, the Titanic becomes a symbol, a cautionary tale, a tragedy wrapped in a luxury aesthetic. People talk about the band, the staircase, the unsinkable ship that sank. They rarely talk about what it revealed, that even as the water rushed in, the world still found a way to sink the poor first. That the great disaster didn't unite people. It sorted them, and it sorted you right out of history's main narrative. The numbers are what remain after the noise fades. After the lights go out, the bodies sink, and the headlines yellow with age, the numbers are still there, silent, exact, and impossible to argue with. The Titanic sailed with over 2,200 people aboard. Roughly 700 survived. More than 1,500 did not. That's the math. That's the shape of the story after it's stripped of violin music and noble last words. But the real horror isn't in the total. It's in the distribution. First-class passengers had a survival rate of about 62%. For first-class women, it was even higher, around 97%. Almost every woman in a fine dress with a private cabin and a view made it off the ship. Almost every one of them had a seat in a boat, a blanket, and a chance to see another morning. Their children, their husbands, their stewards, even some of their pets were given space, because the system was built to protect them, because it was always going to protect them. Second class fared worse, but not by much. Around 42% survived. The women still did well. Over 80% made it. It helped to be respectable, to wear gloves, to speak English without an accent. Officers could look at you and believe you belonged in a lifeboat, that you would be grateful, that you wouldn't make a scene. Being well-behaved helped. Being visible helped. Being white helped. The ocean doesn't discriminate, but the people in charge certainly did. And then there was third class, steerage, the bottom of the ship and the bottom of the list. Your odds of survival were around 25%, 1 in 4, and that's across the board. For men, it was worse, less than 17%. Most of you died below decks or in the freezing water or behind locked gates while the last boats were lowered. Not because you didn't try, not because you didn't deserve it, but because the system didn't recognise your urgency as legitimate. The people organising the evacuation looked past you, and the water did the rest. Even among women, the disparity was staggering. First-class women, 97% survival. Third-class women, closer to 50%. And many of those who survived did so by escaping early, climbing stairs, forcing open gates, disobeying instructions. The ones who waited politely, who followed orders, who assumed fairness would prevail, they froze, they drowned, they vanished. The ship taught a brutal lesson that night. Compliance is not safety when the rules aren't written for you. Children too were not spared equally. First-class children, almost all survived. Third-class children, over half died. Small bodies lost in the dark, some never even making it above the waterline. Some family groups perished entirely. No one remembered their names, no one memorialised their stories. The focus remained on the prominent, the wealthy, the dramatic, the ones with portraits already hanging in drawing rooms. The Titanic didn't just sink, it sorted. It did what it was built to do, even in death. The lifeboats were never truly meant for everyone. The corridors were never meant to be shared. The design made it clear. There was an upstairs, and there was a downstairs, and those lines were not meant to blur. And when disaster came, the structure held. It held so well that it dictated who got out and who didn't. It wasn't just tragedy, it was design functioning as intended. Later, these numbers would be displayed in reports, argued over in courtrooms, and published in newspapers. They'd be quoted as evidence of systemic failure, of human error, of the need for reform. And reforms would come, more lifeboats, better drills, looser gate policies. But those reforms were built on the backs of statistics. They were built on you, on your absence, on your silence. Every improvement was paid for, with the lives of those who were never meant to be part of the official story. Some people survived because they were lucky. Most survived because they were meant to. They were the ones given directions, given access, given priority. Your chances were never even. They were never fair. They were never intended to be. The Titanic was a floating city, and like every city, it had districts, gates and walls. You were in the wrong one, and when the water rose, those walls didn't break. They held. You don't see the numbers right away. No one does. At first, there's only grief, only chaos. But as the weeks pass and the names are tallied, a pattern emerges, one too clear to ignore. Not a disaster of chance, but of structure, of choices, of values. The lifeboats weren't full. The time wasn't too short. The night wasn't too dark. What failed was the system, the assumption that some people were worth more than others, and the quiet agreement that this would never be said out loud. Now it's written down. Clean, simple, brutal. Survivors, 705. Dead, 1,500 and change. Rich, mostly rescued. Poor, mostly lost. History likes to round these numbers, to soften them. But you know the truth. There's nothing soft about them. They are sharp. They are final. They are proof. And you are part of them. You're gone now. Not just dead, but gone in the way people disappear, when no one expected them to matter in the first place. There's no record of your last words. No statue raised in your memory. You are not the subject of poems or movies. You are the part they leave out when the story needs to fit a certain shape. The everyman they mention, in theory but never name. The silence in every official account. The lifeboats left without you. The Carpathia came too late. The newspapers wrote their stories and moved on. And so did everyone else. The world above the water forgot you with shocking efficiency, as if it had been waiting for an excuse. As if your erasure was simply tidying up. What remains is the structure, the hierarchy, the quiet, civilized logic of who was allowed to live and who was not. That's the real legacy of the Titanic. Not just a sunken ship, but a blueprint of how easily people are sorted, how calmly inequality disguises itself as policy. You didn't die because of bad luck. You died because someone somewhere had decided your life didn't need a contingency plan. Your name, if recorded at all, is buried in the middle of a list. Male, 3rd class. Nationality, Irish. Body not recovered. That's your summary, not your story. That's the version that fits into reports and registers. The person you were, your voice, your memories, your reasons for boarding that ship, is missing. Not lost, just unrecorded. And that is the tragedy beneath the tragedy. That even now, long after the wreck has been found and the story's polished, most people still don't know who you were. They remember the captain, the band, the unsinkable socialites who made it off the boat and into legend. But not you. You died where you lived, below the line, below the waterline, below the fold. They'll say the Titanic changed the world, that it forced reform, that lifeboats were added, that safety standards improved, and all of that is true, but none of it came soon enough for you. Your death was not a warning heeded in time. It was a price quietly paid, an expense folded into the cost of doing business at sea. People still romanticize it, the Titanic, the music, the stars, the final meal, but that version only survives because yours didn't. It's easier to remember the orchestra than the locked stairwells. Easier to quote the captain than to count the dead children in 3rd class. Easier to build a myth than to face what it says about the way we organise our world. You were not supposed to survive. You just didn't know it until the lights flickered off, until the gates closed, until the boats left. You didn't know until too late that survival had less to do with strength or merit and everything to do with where you were standing when history decided to fail you. But maybe that's the part that should be remembered. Not just the ship, or the iceberg, or the wealthy who toasted to their own survival, but you, the ones who didn't make it into the story, the ones who waited for help that never came, who died not because the sea was cruel, but because someone else decided they didn't need to care. The sea took you, but it wasn't the first to forget you. Your lights flickered off long before the ships did, not from failure, but from design. That brings us to the end of tonight's slow descent into a disaster that didn't just sink a ship. It exposed exactly how quietly a system can decide who's worth saving. If you're still awake, thank you for drifting through this cold and careful unravelling of history with me. If you'd like early access to more softly narrated catastrophes and other perks like ad-free audio of the episodes, you'll find the Patreon link in the description. Feel free to like, subscribe, and leave a comment about where you think your journey would have ended. At the locked gate, the lifeboat that left, or the silence that followed. Sleep well.